Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Run It Back. My name is Remco Rinkema, and today I am joined by none other than Crown Up Guy himself, Mr. Fedor Holz. Thank you so much for joining me as we are diving in to the $1 million Big 1-4 one-drop final table. You guys can see the names on the screen. Dan Smith also involved. We got plenty of hands to break down, but Fedor, first and foremost, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you on the show. I'm going to get the footage rolling right away because we have a ton to dive into. If you're watching the show for the first time, Run It Back is a show in which we break down the most epic poker content ever created with the help of the players who were involved. And in this case, Fedor, as you can see on the screen, one of the big players at this final table, with Justin Bonomo leading the way with a massive chip lead. It was the year of Bonomo, but Fedor did his very best to prevent him from winning another big title. So we'll see how that goes on this final table. If you have questions for Fedor, please send them into the chat right now on both Facebook and YouTube. And don't forget to like this video if you enjoy the content. It really helps us a lot. Fedor, let me ask you first, this event, when have you last seen the footage, and do you have, a good recall of everything that went down at this final table?
I've seen the footage of the 10 on the river probably 100 times, but besides that, I actually didn't watch much of the footage. I remember some hands, but I am curious to see what I don't remember.
Yeah, me too. We're diving into the first hand here right away. Of course, you got to start off the final table by flopping a set. That's just how it goes. No big deal. So coming into this final table, let's start with that. Did you have a specific game plan and approach because you were out of position against Justin, who had the chip lead and who basically was like on a massive heater? So also, coming into the final table with a lot of confidence.
It doesn't change a huge deal. Obviously, like, what is the most special in this table is that there are some players who I basically never play against except in this tournament. So Salomon and Einhorn, I just play against once every 2 years, basically. And so, yeah, that changes the dynamic quite a bit. But in general, it's mostly, I've been in these spots before, you're mid-stack or I'm a mid-stack and there's a larger stack, or maybe even an aggressive top player. And I got to somewhat manage my stack. So yeah, it's definitely something to take into consideration.
Right. How much did the payouts and ICM in this particular event, $1 million buy-in? Let's not, overlook the fact that this is the biggest buy-in of the year. How much does that come into play in an event like this, where there's a pretty clear divide between top pros and the more recreational players?
Yeah, the idea generally for me is thinking about, okay, my chips, what's my equity finishing which place, and how can I increase it overall, right? Like, how obviously I want to maximize the overall dollar probabilities, basically. And so sometimes it's best to kind of play for second place or increase the chance to get second or third by playing a bit tighter in some spots, and sometimes the other way around. And in this particular case, it's mostly a rule of thumb when there's not so many buy-ins for first, then it's mostly more relevant to play a bit more cautious when the payout is steeper, right? So when it's winner takes it all, then this doesn't really play a role. You just try to win as many chips, basically. And when it's a very, very shallow payout structure, then you play more conservative, and chips matter a bit more.
Right.
So in this case, I think it was 10 buy-ins. Yeah, you can see now 10 buy-ins, 6 buy-ins, 4 buy-ins, 2.8 and 2. So a pretty normal, even almost a pretty normal sit and go payout structure in this case, or MTT payout structure. So just a general, it looks like big numbers, but just a general thing.
Yeah, exactly. With all the success that you've had in poker, is an event like this a moment to take a bigger shot, to put some more on the line because you can afford to do so and you perhaps feel good about the field? Or do you approach every spot sort of the same way in relation to your bankroll?
For me, the biggest factor is how much value there is in the investment. So if I took a very big piece in this tournament, I can say that. I also had very big pieces in other players that didn't go so well. So this tournament in particular for me is one where I think that because it's such a small market, like there's not many people who can buy 500K worth of action. The prices were rather good for an investor, in my opinion. So that's a spot where I like to invest in myself and I like to invest in other players. So I think I had over $1 million invested in this tournament.
Wow, that's insane. And then of course, you just have to do it yourself, put the team on your back, and
Yeah.
and make the deep run on your own. When you have large pieces of other players in a big buy-in like this, do you refresh the chip counts and focus on them as well while you're playing, or is it easier for you to sort of focus on yourself and then see the results as they develop?
What do you mean by chip counts?
Well, I mean, obviously during the tournament,
In the earlier stages?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too many tables. I think it was 5 tables maybe, or 4 tables. So it's quite, there's breaks and you talk to the people. So it's quite easy to have an overview and see what's going on. So I didn't check too much of like what's happening. It's more like poker news updates with some interesting hands, and then here and there you see if someone's busting or if someone wins a big pot. That's mostly it.
Right. As far as where you were, as far as your game at this point in time, the joke has been made many, many times. People who say that they are retired come back every now and then to win big events. But it also makes me wonder, as far as retirements, how sharp were you in this moment? Were you still keeping up with the game? And how do you sort of stay retired but also stay sharp?
I mean, this was 2018. I felt still very good about my life game. So it's just something where life and online is quite different. It's, I think, progressed in a different way. There's obviously things that come over and that translate into each other. But in live poker, there's such a big aspect of, I think, sub information that are way harder to learn. They're there and you can quantify them somehow and you can communicate it somehow, but it's, I think, a lot about experiencing it yourself, and it's way harder to transport it. Whereas in online, I have way faster feedback loop. I can transport the information a lot better too, by showing someone statistics or showing a HUD or explaining something. Whereas in live, it's harder to explain someone, how it feels when someone is bluffing, or it's just way harder. So I feel pretty confident about that, and I think I still played pretty well in 2018 in that tournament.
Right. So as we're watching a hand between Einhorn and Bonomo here, I'm also curious because this year, of course, all of a sudden you're back in the online streets as if it's, 2015 all over again and, grinding really hard. Does that mean that you've put more time and effort into your poker game in recent times, or is that still all the information that you've learned in the last few years that helps you to be a big factor and a big winner in these online tournaments?
So when I started in March playing more again, I felt first I was pretty unsure. I was really unsure about, can I play a 5K with mostly regs? How will I perform in a tank? And then there were 25Ks and big tournaments going on online. And I was pretty cautious. I was reviewing a lot of hands and looking at other players, and there were a lot of things that I felt, a lot of spots where I felt, oh, I don't really know, I want to look this up, or I want to talk to someone about it. And now I played maybe, I don't know, 80,000, 100,000 hands or so. Now I feel a lot more comfortable. So I think 2 to 3 months in, I bounced back and forth ideas with a lot of players, and I learned very quickly from seeing other players play. So I like to play against them, and then I adopt what they do well and fix my leaks. So I think I made huge progress in the last couple months.
Wow.
So I'm very happy. Very happy about that.
It's awesome to hear that you are able to turn the switch and get yourself back into that mind space. Right now we are seeing David Einhorn all in with ace queen after Bonomo raised him on the flop with the 7-4, making top pair. Obviously, probably some arguments to be made for Einhorn to get rid of his cards there, but also he was pretty short stacked. So pot committed in a sense there as well, even though he only had 2 overcards. King on the river doesn't do it for Einhorn. One of the most respected players in a field like this, always gives all of the money he wins to charity, dating back to when he first appeared on the scene in the 2005 WSOP main event when he made the final 3 tables. People who remember that know that he was wearing the blue sweater with all the paint on it, which was for the children's hospital that he was supporting back in those days. But yeah, definitely a legend of the game, David Einhorn, and always good to see him at the WSOP. And this brings us down to the final 5 players. Action continues. As you can see, some stats here on the screen. Definitely, a high pressure moment for all the players involved, except if your name is Rick Salomon. This guy is just an ultimate end boss. For the people in the chat, please keep the questions coming. If they fit into our conversation, I will make sure to ask them. I see tons of people here in the chat. I would love to know where all you guys are watching from, and girls, of course, because I know that this show has tons of women as fans. Come on, let's hear it in the chat one time. Definitely some fun comments already. We got some people from Vienna already watching, so your neighbors might be watching right now, Fedor. It's good to have Vienna in the house. All right, here it is. Byron Kaverman, all in, ace-5 suited. Fedor, take us through the hand.
I mean, I've seen this one before. I could speak the commentary if need be. So yeah, it's actually a pretty simple spot. And yet huge because of the time pressure. I think that's actually a big thing. Is there is obviously, when there's huge equity, like it's my own equity. It's I'm invested in this tournament, but then it's for $1 million. There's other people who have shares of me, so I really want to make sure I make the best possible decisions I can. And then in terms of dollar equity, that might be one of the top 5 biggest decisions I ever had to make. And so I just want to make sure that I make good decisions. And then you have a 30-second shot clock and you're constantly on the spot. So yeah, Kaverman shoves 8 million, 5. So we're in the money now, I think. And he shoves under the gun, and I have 10s. I think it was cutoff. Bonomo's on the button. And then now this hand gets really weird because Salomon, he looks at his cards and he looks like this. And you could see in his face that he's looking at the cards with the intention to fold. So he was just like, okay, I look because I kind of need to look, but I'm just getting out of here. And then he shrugs and he's like, okay, and shoves. And while he does that, when he lifts his card, I see a red ace flashing. And now it gets really weird because then it goes back and forth. And for some reason, I think Jack rules that because it flashed, he needs to now turn it over.
So how did you feel about that in the moment? Because clearly, the ace is information for you. Any information is helpful for you to make a decision. But at the same time, you don't want to cause a big scene, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's also, you have to see then the time immediately starts. Is like I didn't want to start. It's like, oh, is this the right ruling or not? I was just taking in the situation as it is. I don't even know what the ruling is. I actually have no idea. It just seemed weird. Why does he need to be punished more now after he already gave away information? Like I'm closing the action. There's no one else. Like if I saw something, like I saw something. If not. Like there's no reason to do more. And the weird thing, and this is actually where it gets very, very tricky for me, is I was very confused in the beginning because I thought at first I saw the ace of diamonds. And then when he turns around, it's the ace of hearts. So now the first thing I had to think about is, okay, did I see, was this the ace of hearts I saw and I just saw the wrong suit? Or did he flash the other one and that was the ace of diamonds, he had aces? So first it was just a weird situation where I first had to take in this whole situation of him flashing a card. Then I had to think about, okay, what does this mean for his range? He now should only have ace, king, and aces. And then kind of a mix between trying to make sure that it's a profitable call or calculating how profitable the call is, and always in the middle trying to see if he gives away anything. Is he super comfortable? Does he want me to fold or does he want me to call? And that's kind of the the rundown of the 2 minutes of me using all my time bank chips.
Is tens like the dead center of the decision? Is nines a fold and jacks an easy call?
So it's basically against an exposed ace, tens is a call because it's ace, king, and aces. Against a not, like if there's no cards exposed, tens should just be a fold.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Because he should be shot. I mean, it depends how he's playing. Like, if he shoves like jacks plus or tens plus ace king, then tens isn't, like against ace king I'm flipping, against jacks I'm 20-80, so not the greatest situation. And that's kind of a spot where with him in the big blind, it's one of the spots where one of the reasons why I do have a calling range rather than just a shoving range, an ISO shoving range, because I do have some call folds against his reshoving range. And I know he's not he's never gonna go crazy with like ace queen off or something. He's just I think it's basically literally definitely jacks, ace king, and maybe tens in there as well. And against that, I like to call fold my tens.
Wow, it's so fascinating that the exposed card made all the difference, because you would have folded the tens if that would not have happened. So people watching at home, be careful with your cards, because it could heavily influence your abilities to win $10 million. Let's listen into this river card.
That's 4 jacks and 2 tens, 6 outs. Oh my goodness. And by the way, Kaverman needs a club. Any club except the king of clubs. Wow.
Fedor can still score a double knockout. Still a sweat on the river for everyone.
A jack of clubs comes.
I know what's coming.
The river card
is my God.
Fedor Holz gets there on the river and scores the double knockout.
Oh,
I love the soundbite. Like, that's probably my. It's not so much about the hand itself, but the whole scenery of the emotions and the commentaries. I love how he's commentating, and it's like so exciting. So yeah, it's probably one of my favorite clips of me playing poker.
I mean, the double knockout at $1 million final table in a hand where on the turn everyone was still very live. I mean, you were the least live of all of them, but Byron picked up the flush draw as well. Just absolutely insane the way this hand played out. And I think if we're being really honest here, probably a top 10 hand in WSP history, of at least of the last decade. Of course, many hands to consider there, but this was definitely one of those crazy hands. Describe the roller coaster of emotions there, because clearly when you call and you see what you're up against, like, oh wow, another ace is dead. That's great for me. I'm not up against aces, which is awesome. So describe to me sort of like flop, turn, and river in this spot.
I mean, I was pretty content actually. It's one of these spots where obviously I want to win, and I'm a competitive guy. I like to play in these big spots. Like, that's, I don't know, it's just super fun and enjoyable. But also, I mean, it's been a fun ride, and I had a lot of fun playing it, and I think I made good decisions throughout the tournament. So at this point, it's just, you get it in big, it can go one way or the other, and that's how it is. That's part of poker. So I'm happy about making good decisions, and then anything else that happens afterwards can happen.
Right. The calculators come out. The payouts are on the sheet of paper. There's there's a lot of high level math going on here. You have almost half the chips in play. What were these discussions like with the money on the line, knowing the pieces, and probably the people on the rail had pieces of Justin and Dan, and vice versa. So what is it like to discuss a deal like that in a spot like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's just again, like, you don't really need to battle out for millions of dollars. Like, I think all three of us, we if it's about 25K or 2.5 million, we're gonna play our best. But I think all three of us, we didn't need to gamble there big time. So it was just about checking if it makes sense to discuss a deal, and I actually think we didn't deal at this point. So yeah, just looking into the opportunity and seeing like, hey, does this make sense? Is this something we can agree to? And and I think we didn't come to an agreement, and then we just continued fighting.
I love it. 10 million on the line. If you guys are just tuning in, this is Run It Back. We are live breaking down this final table from the 2018 WSOP. It is the big one for One Drop Dan Smith in the cowboy hat, Justin Bonomo with his hands, as always, below the table, and Fedor Holz just casually leaning forward with almost half the chips in play, as we are three-handed for 10 million bucks. Diego on Facebook is saying, what an amazing moment watching from Ecuador. Big fans of Fedor here. And then Simon comes in, says, that's a river rat. Exactly. You got to know a river rat when you see one. Ruud calls it history. I love it. It's definitely historic. And Carlos is asking, how does it feel when you hit that river card? Was there a lot of adrenaline and excitement? Are you allowed to feel that?
Yeah, absolutely crazy. It's I think you can see already. I mean, I was nervous, and I remember when it's in these super huge pots, like my body's responding too. I was sweating a bit, and it was really like, wow, it's there's a lot of light, and it's lots of my friends were there actually. So my girlfriend was there at the time as well, and so it's just huge. You get it in for 60 million chips in one of the biggest or the biggest tournament of the year. It's crazy. That's probably one of the biggest flips of the year you can get into. So yeah, it's massive.
Yeah, that is awesome. We got Ireland, Israel, El Salvador, Netherlands, San Diego. We got Scottsdale in the house. We have tons of people watching from all over. I really appreciate it. Fedor, while we watch Bonomo and Dan Smith battle it out here, Timo is asking, Fedor, how did you get started? Who did you learn from when you first were playing poker? And and he also says, I've seen you stare down people for minutes. Is that part of your bag of tricks? So let's take it one at a time. Let's start at the beginning. How did you learn and make that jump to the higher stakes? Was there someone who coached you? Was there specific training you did? And how did you make that step?
I started taking poker more serious in 2011, 2012, which means doing it full time and trying to stay on, play regular stakes and play grind tournaments and sit and goes and so on. And at that time, first, I wasn't very successful. I think my first couple of thousand games, I was moving up in stakes because I started working with stakers and they were giving me coaching. But I think I wasn't in the right mindset, not in the right place, not in the right environment in terms of, at that time, being a very profitable player. And so I think it was good that I stuck with it. And I had very great people around me that I could learn from that were worse or similar or better players than me. And I think that's always great to have a good balance between people you can give something to that are maybe peers at the same level, and then people that I could learn from. And I had a lot of people I could learn from. So that was awesome. I could learn from all these people around me. And it's mostly the group of Germans, some that dropped out, but also some that you still see playing the high stakes. So it's been a pretty tight-knit group since back then, and it's without them it wouldn't have been the same.
Shout out to the OGs, Fabian Quos, Tobias Renkemeyer, Igor Kurganov still on the scene, of course, Niklas Heinecker. The Germans had a lot of OGs that were really...
I mean, these are the actual OGs, like these are people kind of a generation before me. It's more, it was interesting because there was this switch, I think, where they won all the money already. They won all the tournaments. And then there was kind of this next generation of more like Dominik Nietzsche, Corey Aldemir, Rainer Kempe, Steffen Sondheimer, Christian. Like, this was my group that I spent a lot of time with. And we played a lot of these tournaments.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how different countries have different sort of groups. The Spanish players do really have that, and I feel like now, the Russians have a group as well, and the Germans for a long time were in control and dominating the high roller scene. And now about the stare down, and I see questions on YouTube as well. Did someone ever smack you in the face after staring them down for too long? Well, I don't think that's ever happened, but what comes into the stare? At what point do you feel comfortable enough to do that, and does it help you?
I mean, it's a thing where I did it very intensively. I'm not doing it similarly anymore. And yeah, it's just something that very much served me in terms of making other people uncomfortable so that they give more information so that I can outplay them better or know better where I'm at or what kind of hands they have. So yeah, that's been the purpose of it. Because other people tried the same, right? Like they looked at me, they tried to get information from me, and that was just my way of putting that to the extreme and trying to make more chips, basically. And that's basically what I've been using it for, or why I've been doing it. And then I realized it's also a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and it's creating an environment that I don't necessarily want to create. It's like it's actively making other people uncomfortable, and I do less of that now. So I think I can have fun and be less serious and still play good poker.
Right. So, that's an interesting topic you bring up, because there's a lot of talk always about the seriousness of the game and how the game should be fun. And, people are, we're bringing in time bank chips or, at least the shot clock to speed up the game a little bit. Seeing yourself, watching yourself back on certain kind of events, do you think like, oh, maybe I'm not as fun to play with? Is that something that goes through your mind? Or is it more so that you can enjoy more yourself if you're not being as, focused and as direct with your stares and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think one part is it wasn't my plan to be fun to play with.
Of course.
It was the opposite. It was like, I want people to not, like, I don't want to play with me. And I mean, it worked. It's people took it in one or the other direction. Either they avoided me and became more passive, or they saw it as an ego battle, and I didn't. So they tried to outplay me or tried to win against me, and so gave me a lot of chips. And both ways, it really helped my style, I think, and brought me in so many spots that other people don't get into because of how I play and how people perceive me and so on. So yeah, it's been a huge tool that I worked and spent a lot of time on, where now I just don't have that level of competitiveness, I think. In at least to that degree.
Right. But when you play soccer, you still stare down the goalkeeper like the whole game, right?
I mean, of course.
Okay. Keep those questions coming in the chat. Misha is asking, while we just watched you win another hand, making a straight, Bonomo thinking about it there for a while there. He had the ace-high flush draw on the turn. Pair of deuces on the river was not big enough for him to call. Fedor, if you see hands that you want to give some thoughts on, please interrupt me as I try to tackle some of these questions here. Misha sends me an interesting question. I think that this is something that players from all over the world at any given stake deal with. He's asking, what's the longest downswing you've ever had, and has it ever made you question your career?
Oh yeah, hell yeah. You see a part of my career, and I mean, if you look at what people see from the outside, most of the people see the winnings,
right?
And it's very specific in my case. There's obviously a bit more backstory, and I've given interviews and talked about a variety of things. But in the end, people remember, oh, he cashed 30 million and he won this tournament and that and won a bracelet and all that stuff. And I mean, there's a lot of time invested. That's, you look at maybe 200 hours, and then there's another 15,000 hours that went in there before that. So yeah, I had times when I didn't like it, or things weren't going my way so well, or I was considering to quit, or I didn't have much fun playing, or yeah, all that is part of it too. And I think the biggest relevant downswing I had was in 2015. So interestingly enough, right before my very very successful year. And that's also showcasing, I think, how you just forget, also in the external perspective, of things that didn't go so well, and just focus on the things that are so amazing. And yeah, I didn't forget. So it's been I think 11 months of not really, like, I think playing my best probably throughout my whole career and not really winning money, and that's been very, very frustrating. So everyone's looking at me as like, wow, everything runs so good, and when it's a month or two, it's no problem. 4 months, 5 months, it's, it gets a bit tedious. But I think it's this segregation that makes it more difficult. So it's this thing that I felt alone with. Even my friends, they didn't really know that I, just lost 40% of my bankroll and things aren't going so well, because they just see, I run deep in the main and cash for 200K, or I come third in the 10K 6 max, or I come there and, this and that. But then they don't see the 250 live tournaments I played and the 3,000 online tournaments I played and the things that didn't go so well. And I think that's a pretty relevant part that I think should be talked about more, as interesting, I think, to hear more about.
Right. So when you talk about 11-month downswing, do we talk about moving down in stakes? Do we talk about selling more action to stay at the same stakes? How much were you losing at sort of the bottom of that? And do you remember a specific turning point?
Yeah, I mean, maybe in rough numbers, I had a low 7-figure bankroll, and I think I dropped below 7 figures. And that was a moment when it wasn't so much about the money. It was more about that trajectory of, wow, hey, okay, like if this continues this way in 11 months, I don't know, I'm broke. So it's just this thing of, it's the questions that it brings up. It's the questions of, am I good enough? Like, am I actually, I played my first 25Ks. I busted 3 bullets in like 2.5 hours. I'm like, these guys, apparently they know what I have. They see my cards, or I don't know what's happening, but I lose every hand. And it's very strong selective bias, and a matter of a couple hundred hands, or maybe a couple thousand hands that make up so much of UAV that sometimes, especially live, I think live is a special kind, because the time versus volume is so crazy stretched. Whereas online, I had maybe 100K downswing or 200K downswing, but that was the most. I think with the RI I had online, it just wasn't possible to go on huge downswings. But live, I played maybe 200 tournaments a year. Like, that was a lot. I was grinding a lot, but in 200 tournaments, it's still pretty likely to be down. And especially if there's, sometimes it's a 1K buy-in and I have 1K action, and sometimes it's a 25K buy-in and I have 15K action. And then if you run limit cold and you always bust the high tournaments, you can swing big amounts pretty quickly. And so, yeah, it was definitely a thing of questioning to move down in stakes, or questioning my skill level, questioning everything that you could question.
I mean, I cannot imagine even being in a spot to sign up for the next tournament every single day and doing that 200 times and not having great success. But you turned it around in an epic fashion in 2016. I want to say, looking at your results, it was winning the Alpha 8 at the end of December, and then in January you won the Manila event in the Philippines for $3 million. How does someone's mindset or just general outlook on life change when everything seemingly is coming your way for a stretch of time? And of course, this goes into finishing second in the super high roller bowl to your good friend Reiner Kempe, and you guys had pieces, so that must have been one of your biggest days ever. I had Reiner on the show last week. We broke down that entire final table. If you are new to this show as a viewer, go and watch that, because it was a really interesting breakdown of that final table. So back to my question, what is it like then when everything starts sort of falling into place?
Actually, the turning point was WSOP Europe 25K 6 max.
Oh.
Because I remember this very distinctively. I was playing, it was in Berlin, and I was playing, and it was a nice tournament. It was a nice setting, and I think they streamed or recorded, one of the two recorded the final table. And I was there 20 minutes early, and I was sitting down and I was meditating and just closing my eyes and sitting there and soaking up the moment and just trying to, I like to get accustomed to the environment and just breathe and just feel into what I'm going to need the next couple of hours playing. And I remember busting in the first, I think it must have been the first hand or the second or the third hand, I think against Davide Kitai. And or gegen Musta, one of the two. And it was a turning point because I busted in sixth, and I came in obviously with I was like, hey, I had a decent stack. I want to play some poker, and it was just I just smiled and I was like, it's fine. Like it's really, I can keep them coming. It's fine. I can bust another 50 of these. I think I'm crushing these, and it's just about continuing and being patient. And that was in October, and that was really big because it's not so much about the results. It's just about, I think, the mindset, the skill, and the patience. And it's really, at that point for me, it wasn't about, actually it was never about, am I beating these tournaments? I was sure I was beating these tournaments. I was sure I was doing well, and I was putting a lot of energy into it. It was about just relaxing, enjoying the process, and just keep going. Just play and don't hesitate and question everything after 10 super high rollers, but just keep going, and results will come. And that was really the beginning where I started working with Elliot. I just focused on making good decisions, and if I bust, I bust, and if I win, I win. But it's about making good choices, and that's been really a turning point in my career, I think, life at least, for sure.
Let's jump into this hand real quick. Bonomo raises the button with King 10 suited. You 3-bet from the big blind with King Queen suited. Flop is really dry. Walk me through this situation like this. Obviously, the King Queen suited is pretty easy 3-bet there before the flop. You make it 5.5 million before the flop, and you continue for 3.6. Walk me through this moment here.
Yeah. So, pre-flop they're at 300K, 600K. We're about 60 bigs effective. King Queen suited for me is just a pretty clear 3-bet, probably 100% of the time. Yeah, just 100% of the time. And then on the flop, I think there's different choices. I can go for larger sizing. I can go for smaller sizing. I don't necessarily like a check here in this situation, given that I can fold out equity when I bet, and the ICM situation for him, like he's supposed to be folding a little bit more than in a raw chip EV situation. So that sizing here is I think trivial. It's not like, for me, it's not either one or the other necessarily always, but just something based on feeling. And sometimes I do one, sometimes I do the other, and then it gets interesting. Where on the turn it gets interesting. Now it's more of, okay, what am I checking? What am I betting? King Queen. Generally, I try to think in these situations, what are the most natural bluffs? So the hands basically that I want to be continuing on the turn, and then potentially also continuing on the river to bet. And it's one of the big things is thinking about what type of cards do you have. So for example, what kind of equity does your hand have against potential hands that call you? Or what kind of blockers do you have in terms of blocking his value hands or his continuing hands or his folding hands? So in this scenario, King Queen suited would probably be best in spades, or then potentially also in hearts, because if I have hearts, he's more likely to have diamonds himself or clubs himself, which are folding on the turn. So there's one thing where hearts is the best bluff with King Queen suited here, because if he has King Queen of diamonds, he calls on the flop and he folds on the turn. So that's kind of it's pretty specific now, and maybe from the outside it looks like, oh, this is a small difference, but it helps to make sure that you select good bluffs and don't just bluff all the time. And in this specific case, I personally, King Queen suited in this spot as a hand, I would probably always bluff, because it has good equity against hands that call, like Ace Jack or Jack 10 or sevens with 2 overcards. And it's a hand that blocks some of his stronger hands like Queen Jack and King Jack. And I'm not making that choice where I say, okay, I just bluff some of the time. I would probably bluff this almost all the time.
Right.
So that's kind of an outside look into how I would deconstruct a hand like this.
So what's interesting to me in that spot is that you bet 7.2 into 19 on the turn, and then Bonomo calls again. How do you look at his range in the situation? Because there could also be lots of smaller pairs in his range. There's probably some jacks in his range. So what's the decision between, evaluating him as someone who's calling down with value, where he might call for stacks on the river, versus, his range being wide enough to the point where you can bluff the river and, not, lose equity there?
Yeah. So first of all, the turn bet really depends on how we look at his range, right? His range really depends on my flop c-bet. So I bet pretty small on the flop, so he should be continuing with a lot of hands. He should be continuing with Queen 10 backdoor flush draw. He should be continuing with Ace 5 backdoor flush draw. So if you consider this, a lot of players look at this board and they think too much in terms of, hey, he has a jack, or he, like now he has a pair after he called. But it might be the case for weaker opponents, but it's not the case for strong opponents. He should have a lot of weaker hands, actually, like hands that don't have a pair, or hands that do not have that much equity now. So now there is some incentive. Let's say even a hand like Ace 8 or Ace 9 or Ace 10, a lot of these hands should continue on the flop against a small bet. And so there is some incentive to be betting a hand like King Queen again against these rather weaker or medium strong hands. And now I think it's more about what kind of sizings I want to choose, right? I can go for a rather, like, let's say maybe 2/3 pot, which could be interesting with a hand like Ace Jack, or with a hand like Queens. Queens probably the most likely hand to do that with. And it could be interesting to do with a hand like King Queen. So I think in this scenario, it's always thinking about, okay, what value hands do I have? How much, what kind of incentive do they have? How to size these hands? What kind of range does he have? So how's the equity? I call it equity distribution. So the type of hands I have, how much equity they have against the type of hands he can have. And given the small flop c-bet, I think I have quite a high incentive to be betting a hand like King Queen again. And that's what I did. And I think, again, between small sizing and large sizing, I do like exploitatively, I do like that small sizing to then shove the river on non-spades as well. But I think 2/3 sizing is fine too.
Right. All right, we're moving into another hand here. You raise the button with 7-6 suited. Bonomo has pocket fives. He moves all in. He was the short stack at this point. Dan Smith in second place. 7-6 suited is an easy fold there for you on the button. Give one up to Bonomo. For the people in the chat, please keep the questions coming, and know as well that at 6 p.m. on the West Coast and 9 p.m. on the East Coast, we will have the weigh-in between Antonio Esfandiari and Phil Hellmuth tonight. Round 2 of High Stakes Duel is coming tomorrow at those same times. So 9 p.m. Eastern, it goes down to $200K match between Hellmuth and Esfandiari live on PokerGO, on Facebook, and on YouTube. So subscribe to all these channels wherever you are watching from right now. It will be there as well. So the weigh-in is tonight, and then tomorrow is round 2 of High Stakes Duel, $200K matchup. This is a potentially interesting hand. Let's see what happens here before I ask you about your take on who you like between Phil and Antonio. You make a 1.7 here with the jacks, and Dan Smith defends with King 10. Let's see what this flop brings. We got the 6-7-7. Not much out there for Dan. As you were saying, though, this probably is interesting to bring up again. Let's hypothesize in case it doesn't play out that way. But if you go for small sizing here on the flop, is that what you meant as far as, the continuing range of someone like Dan is going to be much, much wider because of that small sizing? Or is this completely different because he's out of position?
Yeah, so now it's quite a bit different because I was just referring earlier to if I bet 25% pot, you shouldn't be folding 70% of your hands.
Right.
Yeah. So now here it's a bit different because a lot of the EV it's very different on different types of boards, and he already invested a big blind in the big blind already. So you call quite a lot of hands pre-flop, but then you need to fold quite a lot of them on the flop. So even though you get a good price, the weight of the range I open with and what he defends is already in my favor, of me having maybe 40% or 50% of hands and him having like 75% of hands. And so now on the flop, you need to get rid of a lot of the ones that that don't connect with the board or just don't really have something. And out of position plays a huge role in that. So in that previous spot when Bonomo was on a button, that makes a big difference to that you can call a lot more in position there.
Right. So Dan here in a tough spot here with the King 10. Not much for him to continue on. We're getting lots of love in the chat from people who are excited about this matchup between Antonio and Phil. So 200K match tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern. Fedor, you've played against both these guys. What side do you like between Phil and Antonio in this heads-up battle?
Fill me in. What's the style going to be? What's the matchup like?
It's a heads up sit and go. It's a fairly good structure. It should last 3 to 4 hours, so it's not a turbo. They're playing heads up and they're playing for 200K.
I want to do that too.
So who do you like, Phil or Antonio?
Antonio.
All right, so Phil won the first round. It was epic. If you have not watched it yet, the top 5 best hands are available on YouTube, as well as the entire broadcast if you missed that. And the beauty of High Stakes Duel is that, and Fedor, you're going to get really interested in this right now, every single round, the stakes double until someone wins 3 in a row. After round 4, you have to win 2 in a row. So this could be a multi-million-dollar heads-up battle as this thing keeps escalating. So Antonio is in for the rematch tomorrow night. If he wins, then Helmuth gets the first chance to challenge him again. If Helmuth doesn't, then it's open for anyone. And, we'll then have to go through the list of people who want to challenge Antonio. But, in some kind of way, I'm kind of hoping that maybe Phil wins, because then Antonio gets to challenge him again. Also, for the people who want to know the format, Antonio can lose up to 3 times in one stretch of high-stakes duels. So let's say, to make it even more complicated, if they go back and forth winning, then whoever loses the third match can no longer re-challenge. But that opens it up to someone else. So maybe someone like Fedor Holz will get on the jet to play for millions of dollars once we get into round 4, round 5, round 6, until someone at that point wins 2 in a row. Fedor, do you love the format?
I'm in. I mean, this sounds amazing. I saw them playing heads up, but I didn't know that this was the format they're playing. So yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah. So the round 1 was a 100K matchup that was won by Phil Helmuth, and the 200K match is tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss round 2 of High Stakes Duel. Fedor, I will send you who won after every match, and we'll see if we can get you on the list.
I like what Antonio's doing, like feeding him the 100K to then. Take the 200 and the 400K.
Exactly. For the people in the chat, let me know, who do you like on High Stakes Duel round 2? Are you on Team Phil or are you on Team Antonio? And let me ask you right now, Fedor, people are asking for some Phil Helmuth stories. Obviously, they are asking that because that iconic moment on the Super High Roller Bowl where he reaches out with his hand and says, "Nice to meet you, my name is Phil." And then you said, "Nice to meet you, my name is Fedor." So do you have some Helmuth stories, aside from what we've seen on the broadcast?
I actually don't remember that scene. I have to look that up.
Oh, that's great.
You have to send that to me.
I will.
Iconic. I just felt like it was so fun to play against him because I felt I'm in his head. Like every single, I think I made 1 or 2 mistakes in the beginning when I didn't know how he was playing. Like really crazy mistakes. I thought for some reason I had him, in the beginning, I thought that he's a very tight player, which he is in some spots, like crazy. But it's more a passiveness and then mixing in some crazy aggressiveness in smaller pots. And once I played a couple hundred hands with him, it was fun. So I would love to play more against him.
I would love to see that. Let's hope for like a round 6, Phil Hellmuth against Fedor Holz. That would be incredible to watch. Right here in this spot, you only have the deuce, but Bonomo has absolutely nothing. These are always interesting spots. Fedor, in this situation, and yes, we have not been breaking this down street by street, but in this situation, if you recall, is there actually an argument to be made for the deuce to be the best hand?
Yeah, I mean, there's always an argument. I mean, again, it's one of these spots where, you know, what is he calling in a turn? What is he value shoving on the river? Especially after the previous action. So yeah, it's not a great bluff catcher, but it is one. So I definitely want to consider what I want to be calling there. And what I bet on the turn and then check the river with, I definitely have some clear bluff catchers. Like a lot of my King X, I play exactly this way. So yeah, even like hands like 9X, I like there is quite some I want to be playing this way, but deuce 5 is not, in my opinion, is not a bad candidate to be calling.
Right. All right. Shout out to the people in the chat. We're getting lots of love from people from Germany, Vienna, Austria that say that you are an inspiration. So, you know, that's always great to hear from. I see it's Wilson who says that. Sydney Farber is saying that we need Steve O'Dwyer stories. I'm not sure, Fedor, if you have Steve O'Dwyer stories, but, you know, do interrupt if you have some. And lots of people asking about, you know, how to get started in poker. And I think Fedor, you know, gave some good advice earlier on the show about having a network of people around you that are both better, worse, and equal to your skill level, so you can give some and take some and learn along the way. So, you know, building that network of players around you is probably the one advice that I took away from this situation. There's the kings, there's the 3-bet, and there's the win against the jack deuce suited. This is a great question. Someone on YouTube is asking, Fedor, how are you so lucky? That is what I want to know as well.
I'll explain you at the end of our stream.
Exactly. At the end of the stream, the secret will be revealed. How to be lucky. That's very important. You got it.
It's just one thing. I'll explain you later.
Okay, cool. We'll get to that at the end of the show. So stay tuned for much more as we are still watching the big 1-for-1 drop. Fedor, I want to ask you about the decision to announce that you were going to retire, and then going into, you know, refining that love again and grinding, and like you said, the last few months putting in some serious work. Is the pull from the game itself just too strong for you to sort of leave it behind, or is it just circumstance where, you know, because of COVID you had more time and you couldn't really go to many places and therefore you were playing more online poker? So take me through the mindset and the steps that you took from deciding that you no longer wanted to play full time to now all of a sudden, you know, playing a lot more.
That's a long-winded story. So when I decided to play less, it was a very distinct moment because I was in Vegas for, I think, 7 weeks, and I won a crazy amount of money, and I came back and I was very burned out. I just didn't really, I remember it was dark in my apartment and I didn't open the windows and didn't open the shades, and I was just not, I just didn't really talk to people, didn't really meet people. I was just really, really burned out. And yeah, that's the moment I decided, like, hey, if I win this much and I'm this successful and I feel this way now afterwards, like, I shouldn't, something is going wrong. And that's when I decided, like, hey, let me just take a break and not play. And I think that was a great decision. I think it was really good to get out, and I didn't play. I think in the next, I've been actually, I'm surprised how many people brought this up, this whole retirement joke, but I think I didn't really play poker in the 3 years after. Like, I played maybe less than 20 online days and less than 50 tournaments, I would say, live. So it's really been maybe 3 trips a year and like the occasional W Coupe Sunday type of stuff. So yeah, it's been pretty calm the last three years. But I think most of it was because in 2017, even though I played little, I had a very successful year as well. And then, you know, when I win a tournament and it's like, oh, he's not, he's still playing. But time-wise, I really didn't play much. So that's kind of been the last 4 years where I mostly spent my time on, like, I travel a lot, but more I would say entrepreneurship. If you want to, I don't know. It doesn't feel like this word reflects it very well, but it gives an idea of what I've been doing. And I like a check here. And yeah, that's been that part. And then besides that,
As far as how you got back to playing, because I can understand that after, playing for so much and being so successful, a burnout makes sense. But then coming back to the game, you have some catching up to do if you want to be the best again, which is what you were when you were at the peak. I can understand that you were just like, that is way too much work. I did my thing in poker. Why would I put so many hours back into this game again? The game's gotten tougher, obviously. So that decision to wanting to play again, that's what I'm most curious about.
Yeah, I forgot that part. I said it's a long-winded thing.
Yeah, I ask long questions, but I think about these questions and I put a lot of effort into them.
So when I got back, it was basically a big reason why I didn't play much was also the game. So online wasn't really a thing. If you look back a year ago, you could win, 25K on a Sunday. There was not like, most of these prestigious and big tournaments that were running just were not really running anymore. So yeah, that was also a reason why it just wasn't very exciting. And then due to Corona, suddenly a Tuesday became, huge tournaments, like 5Ks everywhere, 10Ks, like millions of guarantees, like everyone was playing, and just felt like 2013 again, or 12 or 11 or whatever. And that was really fun. It was like, hey, you can go in the streets, battle, and there's good tournaments. It's exciting. It's nice structures. It's good players too. And that, I think, was the environment, the infrastructure. That was the first reason. And then yeah, I actually, now when people say, oh, I got back into it, it's so different. 4 years ago, I was playing almost every day. I was traveling all the time. It was the only thing I did, the only thing I talked about most of the time. And now it's a casual side thing, but I still take it pretty serious.
Right.
So I play once, maximum twice a week if I have a day two, or, there's a big tournament on Tuesday or Thursday or whatever. But right now I mostly play Sunday. And although in April, May, I just really, really felt like competing again. And I saw these players playing better than me, and I was like, hey, I don't want to make it that easy. So I fought back.
I love that. That's the spirit that we need. Does it also mean that, 2021, if things, return to normal a little bit again, you'd be motivated again to jump into some of the big high rollers, perhaps pick and choose your favorite ones across the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I will do basically what I've been doing before, where what I've been doing is, hey, if there's a great opportunity that I want to do or I want to go to and play, I do it. I even 2017, 18, 19, I played nice stops with nice tournaments, cool fields. Like, I'll do the same. And it depends what's running. If there's more running and like it's growing and bigger field, whatever, I'll probably play a bit more. But if there's less running, I'll play less. It's kind of if there's a great opportunity for me to compete and have fun, I'll be there most likely. But if not, then that's also cool. Like, I'm not sweating it a crazy amount. So it's cool if it happens, and I'm there if it happens.
Right. All right. We got trips here on this board against Dan Smith, who's been calling you down with ace high. Talk to me about, what you're thinking here on the river, as there's 9.4 million in the pot and he has 17.6 million left to play.
I didn't see the entire action on the flop. I think turn, I bet he check bet, it goes check bet call. So he checks, I bet he calls. I would think it could have been limp check pre-flop. And then on the flop, I didn't see if he c-bets or not, but looking at the action, it's something like that. Either I bet 3 times or I start betting on the turn. So basically at this point, I mean, for me, it's a very clear bet. And now it's mostly about what sizing, right? I can go for all in. I can go for somewhere smaller, maybe 2/3 of pot. But I probably at this point, I would probably like shove the most. So it's just about, if I have Jack 10 here, what do I do with Jack 10? What do I do with Jack 9? What do I do with like a brick flush draw, or like, just, it's always for me thinking about, okay, how does my range look like? How do I want to construct it? And how can I maximize the value of the equity I have against what he potentially has? So it's always kind of the same, although always different.
Yeah, exactly. The same and always different. And it's easy to sort of think about this from the perspective of, oh, I have trips, because you also have to take into account, what if I don't have trips? Because, goes into your decision making. So if you're watching this, keep that in mind when you are making your big value bets as well. Keep those questions coming for Fedor in the chat. And don't forget to like this video. It's very important for other people to find the content. And if you are enjoying it, please don't hesitate and hit that like button. I really appreciate it. We got lots of banter and back and forth going on in both chats. Daniel is asking, how important is it to have a mental coach to improve your game?
It's hard. It's a hard to answer question. For me, it was very important. But I think it was specifically because of the time and phase I was in, because of how I think and like how I am. I believe my strengths are mostly in actually the more creative side of things, the intuitive side of things, and not so much. I'm not a very disciplined guy. Like, it might seem from the outside, but I think I played maybe 10,000 online tournaments or 12 or whatever, and I'm not the guy who just sits down and grinds 6 days a week, hundreds of tournaments. It's more, I really like to think into it and think about how to solve the puzzle and how to solve the situation. I think I'm good at improving fast and learning new things. And for me, it really helped to stabilize me, or to focus on my strengths and play well. And that's, I think, for everyone performing on a high level, 5%, 10%, 20% make a huge difference. If I play this final table 20% better, that's a massive boost to my expectations. So yeah, I put a lot of emphasis on that, and I think it helped me a ton.
Meanwhile, we see Dan Smith get eliminated in third place by Justin Bonomo. King 10 against Queen 10. Bonomo makes a straight on the river. Dan Smith gets eliminated, and he takes home $4 million for finishing in third. And now we're heads up between Fedor Holz and Justin Bonomo. Fedor, when you get to heads up, playing for millions of dollars, 10 million for first, 6 million for second, with the chippy that you have, how confident do you feel in your heads up game?
I mean, now very confident. Because I just played a lot of heads up.
Yeah, you did. Congrats.
Thanks. But just actually back then, that mountain looks nice. Back then, pretty confident. I played quite a lot of hyper sit and goes against the best players out there. I always thought that it's something that a lot of players were missing out on. Yes, you don't get so often heads up in tournaments, but when you do, it's for all the money. So that's why I really like to play the 1K heads ups against the toughest players and see what do they do, like what sizings do they use, when do they check, with which type of hands, what do they bluff, how do they check raise, like how do they play pre-flop, like all the stuff. Because when someone who's basically top 3 in the world in this format, 20 big blinds deep, is doing certain things, I want to look at it and try to understand why he does that. And especially if you play, or I played against, 5-6 different guys, like sometimes Dan Coleman, sometimes good Russian players, like some Irish, like it's, a variety of different players who've been crushing these games. And so I learned a ton from that. And yeah, I can highly recommend playing different different styles to improve your game.
Right. At this point of the tournament, does it feel like you're already winning, or are you such a competitor where anything but the number one and the bracelet would be, a failure?
No, I didn't feel like a failure. It's more, in this case, it's very specially different because let's say the money on the line, of course, it matters, but in the end, you really have to look at the binds. It's $1 million binds and 10 million for first, 6 million locked up. It's a 4 buy-in heads up, which is, it looks big in numbers, but it's not a massive heads up. So, we've been playing, sometimes if you're in an EPT heads up or WPT main or WSOP main, you play for, 100 buy-ins heads up. And that's, that type of crate, like that's so different. 100 buy-ins, that's like, that makes, if you play better or worse, that makes up your high, like huge time in this tournament. If you could be the difference if you're, slightly losing or a big winner. So in this case, it was a lot about winning it.
Exactly.
It wasn't so much about the buy. It was about winning the bracelet, winning the biggest tournament of the year, and that was what it was about.
Exactly. All right, we got ace 8 here. You raise with 4s on the button. Let's just take this hand and see how this develops, and give me your thoughts about the things that are happening.
I remember this hand very well.
So you raise, Bonomo shoves, you have pocket 4s. What's the thought process here?
Yeah, it just it's not a very deep thought process. It's just a call, just a raise call.
Really? So he has 26 big blinds. At what hand do you sort of have to really decide? Like,
So, I mean, it's kind of, there's different strategies you can play here. I think if you have, like, deuces, for example, is just probably played best as an open jam. Even like 25 big steep, you can, if you get into these nitty gritty frequencies, you will have some other hands that you mix that with, I believe. And then 3s is that hand where I would probably do that too. And then 4s starts to be a raise call for me. So 25 big steep, I'm raise calling 4s, and it's, if you look at 26 big blind steep, it changes his range specifically because 7s plus he's most likely going to 3-bet, and so it's like deuces 3s, sometimes 6s. I'm not sure I play 6s, and then definitely 5s, and then some ace X that he shoves. So it's like, against this range, 4s is just a pretty clear call.
And you have gotten quite used to winning big all-ins, and then the ace comes on the turn. This is like a clash of winners. You and Justin have both won countless tournaments, and in this case, he spikes the ace. The heads-up battle continues. Only 2 outs there. I could have seen you pull this one out on the river, but it's a king. So play.
I would have liked to.
Play continues, unfortunately for you. Lots of very shocked faces there in the crowd to see that there was not a 4 in the river, obviously. Let's see. Michael, I believe he's from Vienna. He's asking, Fedor, who's the best old school player? Like, who do you have the most respect for as far as the players that, sort of paved the way for you? And let's call these the players that were playing, during the first poker boom. So, there's some old school players now, but I'm talking like Negreanu, Helmuth, Ivy, I guess belongs in that category, but maybe he's a bit different. So, of those old school players that you have played against, who do you respect the most?
Probably Eric Seidel.
Legend.
Just I don't know. It's one thing because I mean I did play against most of the other players at some point, but I probably didn't play as much against by a far margin as I played against Eric. Like I played thousands of hands against Eric, and he's just, I don't know. He's just a legend. Like that, he just continues to compete in the high stakes, super high rollers, still try. Like he's just been doing the same thing and crushing for for decades. And Yeah, so I think as a personality and as a player, he's the most relatable, close to me because I played so much with him, and it's fun that that it's this close. Whereas Ivy, it's more a story thing, like he's a for me, it's still, most of the stuff I know about him, I played like twice against him or 3 times. It's mostly stories and on TV and that stuff, but I didn't really interact with him. So it's a different type of thing.
Does Phil Ivey know your name?
I think so. We had a couple conversations when we played in China, but I wouldn't bet on it. I'm not sure. He seems to have a pretty good memory though, so I would think so.
Right. It's the reason I asked that is because there's so many stories of Ivy, like, partying with people or playing with people and then still not knowing who they are because he's like in his own Ivy world.
No, I think I'm actually, I was live there when we were playing, I think in some super hurler in either Philippines or Macau. It might have been Philippines. And it was Joe Carter, I think. I'm not sure. Greg Merce and Joe Carter, like one of the WSOP winners. And he was sitting on our table, and I think, well, now I'm not sure actually if it's something I watched or if I was actually sitting there. But it goes like where he's asking, like, so they say hi, and then he's has no idea who he is.
Right.
And I think they've had history before, and he just won the main, and it was like, and he's like, who are you? What's your name? And it was a really funny setting of like him not knowing any, but I think he was trolling. I think also Vanessa Selps, I think every time he meets her, he's like saying or talking as if he meets her for the first time. It was like 5 times in a row, but he clearly knows. I think sometimes he's just having his own fun.
I think that if Ivy has, he has to, but if he has the level of awareness to troll people like that, because he knows that everybody sort of looks up to him and he is this iconic figure, would make it even funnier to me that he's doing it that way. Phil, if you're watching this, the next time you see Fedor, ask him, "Oh, is this your first live tournament?" That would be a great line there. All right, Bonomo has the jacks. You have 5-3. You have open-end straight draw and the 3-high flush draw. Obviously, we can all tell that flush draw is not good. How good or bad is your hand here in this spot?
It's all right. It's I have equity against most hands. Even if he has a pair, straight draw, like he needs to have a flush or pair plus flush draw type of hand to. Like 8-9 or 9-10 with a club or something. So it's not too many hands where I'm drawing that against. So this is, I think, a good candidate to be check raising with. I'm not such a big fan of my sizing. I do like a smaller size here more, but as a general potential hand, I do like my play.
Let's see. John Bonomo moves all in.
That I think is not a great play.
So how do you look at his move in that sense? What?
I think it's just something you never do, basically. Like, I think it's clearly losing.
Okay.
Compared to, losing in the general sense, I'm not sure, but I think it's losing compared to the other option where I think he should 100% just call here.
Right, and because there is a likelihood that you jam a lot of turns where his hand is still an amazing easy call.
Yeah, it's more one of these things where a lot of players in the past I think called it you want to have an easy decision or just where you at or you put it's these kind of things that people say or used to say, but at this point I think it's. You are so protected. He has quite a lot of flushes. He has straights. He has hands with a flush draw. But you also have a lot of hands that aren't made hands. You have, 9-10, or you have maybe king queen with the king of clubs, or like some hand that still wants to continue. And I think, given that your made hands are made hands, like if you have a flush, you have a flush, like you want him to bluff, he wants me to bluff into him. There is not really that much incentive to shove here, especially with the jacks, like jack of clubs. he has a hand that is great as a bluff catcher. Has good equity, is quite ahead against, like you could see, against even my hand where I have an open ender and a flush draw. Like with his hand, it's just he has 80% equity, and I really don't think in general that he should be shoving much at all, if at all. I'm not even sure if there's any shoves here at all in theory, and if so, very little. And I just don't like the play.
All right. Bonomo picks up that hand. You get rid of the 5-3. Moving on to the next hand. Obviously, this is heads-up play, so it moves really fast. I'm trying to keep up with all the action, as well as I will keep an eye on the chat. The more you guys like the video, the more I will be paying attention to the chat, because I do get a nice notification of that. A person on YouTube is asking, Fedor, do you like short deck? Give me your thoughts. Are you a short deck guy?
Never really played much. Just never really played. You're not a big fan. I find it okay. Not something I would say, oh wow, I need to play this.
Right. So you just like pocket fours and pocket fives way too much.
Exactly.
Not
anymore after that last all-in, as you could tell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you had some hope there, but it did not really play out the way that you wanted it. A question that I'm curious about, Fedor, is it possible at this point in time, at the high stakes, in the high rollers and the big online events, is it possible to still be a winning player without all the solvers and all the GTO stuff? Like, can you still with just some plain old water and bread be a winning player?
I mean, I think I'm basically showing you that you can, because there's probably players who use it less than me, but not many.
Oh, really?
So yeah, basically, besides, obviously I listen to players, but most of the work I do is rather thinking than actually solving stuff. I don't even have I don't run sims here. Obviously there's things I see when friends do it, or when people post stuff, or like there's things I get access to it and I see it, but it's I think at a point where I can, in most of the spots, I can fathom in which direction a solver would go. And then if I would really want, if I would say now is like, oh, I want to become the best cash game player or the best whatever, the best at poker. And then it would be more about more advanced stuff and running simulations for these things, like river spots or specific turn spots and specific sizings and check raises and stuff like that. But to be honest, I don't really want to do that. I enjoy trying to, find these spots by just thinking about it. And I think I have a good enough idea of what could be an optimal strategy that it's fun enough and still I can crush the high stakes. So I want to do it that way.
This is like the best thing that most people in the chat are hearing. Like, oh, wow, I can still actually make some waves without having to be in the solver lab 24/7. So that being said, what do you then attribute your skill to? Is it like a very good photographic memory? Is it very good recall of...
No photographic memory.
Really? No, not at all?
No.
So, because to me, it seems that there needs to be an answer to where that comes from. And, of course, experience helps, and having seen spots before, and, remembering what people said. But in the moment, is that just, your ability to be clear, have a clear mind, and to think in the moment about stuff? Like, what do you think is the biggest factor for your success?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It's it's one of these questions again. What's the thing? It's a mix, I think, of a variety of things, and I believe that I'm realizing again now that I'm a lot more clear when I think now, because I think having some distance and now actually really having a lot more fun also when playing, and having more of these, like, oh, I play once a week, and then I really focus on that, or twice a week. That really helps me to be able to think. And yeah, that's definitely something where I would say that plays a huge role. But in general, I think I'm just very good at soaking up or filtering large parts or large fields of information, and then trying to turn that into something that I can use that helps me play well. or make good decisions or solve the situation at hand or whatsoever.
Right.
And yeah, that's, I think, a big part of my success is just really constantly trying to invent something new and try to solve what's ahead of me.
So you're saying there still is a lot of creativity in poker, even though, you know, some players make it sound as though it is a robot game.
I mean, it is in a sense, but it's also, it's what I mean by creativity is that abstraction process when you can literally, I think if you're really good at thinking in or understanding that framework poker, then you can basically come up with a solver solution really close to how a solver would solve it. Because in the end, it's only about, you have a range, you have potential hands you can have, and your opponent has potential hands you can have. And you want to find the best strategy to utilize that value this range has. And so now it's only about thinking, okay, like, what do I do with this hand, and what do I do with this hand, and what do I do with this hand, and how can I combine all of these or how can I combine the strategy to that's actually a pretty relevant hand, to, you know, to find the best balance, the best equilibrium.
Right.
And if you do that, you know, by just thinking, you can come to a pretty good result, and you don't necessarily need a solver for that.
I think we just missed a very important hand.
Yeah.
As I'll go back real quick to summarize what the action was.
Yeah, I can explain. It's I think I open pre, he 3-bets. I call, flop is queen 4-3. He bets small. I call. I think it's one of the worst hands I should be continuing here. And I don't really have backdoors, but it's still, I have an overcard and backdoor straight draw. So good enough to call against that sizing. That's what I meant before, by the way. Now he checks. I now do not like my choice so much. I think a check is better on the turn. I think my hand is a bit too good to bluff. And I do have some 5-6, 6-7, 5-7. I do have some Jack-10 spades, like 9, you know, like I do have some weaker hands that I want to be betting here. I think King-Jack is a so-so bet. Like I don't hate it, but I think checking, especially against Justin, is a lot better here. I don't think he's folding ace-high too often here on the turn, by the way, so I think that plays a big role. It really depends how he plays his ace-7 suited. How he plays his, you know, ace-9 off or whatever makes a big difference here. So yeah, I personally like a check a lot more. And then once I bet on the turn, 6 on the river, I think that's a mandatory bet for me now. And there's only the choice of shoving. So I think there's not really much to, yeah.
So the river shove is the most standard part of this hand.
I mean, what I just mentioned, right? Like I just mentioned a couple of hands that I think I could be having here, like 5-6, 5-7. Obviously, I have all the good hands too. You know, I have all the Queen X. I have 3-4. I have 4s. I have 3s. I think, like, I'm not sure how I play aces and kings. Probably more in the 4-bet range. So I don't really have that, but that's, you know, that's how it's going to be. Sometimes I have a queen here, sometimes I have king queen, and sometimes I have king jack. Like it's just how things are supposed to be. And then on the 6 on the river, I think just too much stuff gets there that I want to be shoving my king jack here for sure. Especially not blocking the clubs. Like that's the thing, you know, a hand like 9-10 of clubs here, for example, is a lot worse now to shove because he doesn't have the ace-10 of clubs, the ace-9 of clubs, king-10 of clubs, whatever, that he check calls maybe on the turn. So my king-jack actually now is a pretty damn good hand to bluff.
Right.
I block his ace-king, I block his queen-jack, I block his potentially king-queen, I block his jacks. So like a lot of these reasons I I do like the bluff on the river. The turn bet, though, I'm not such a big fan of.
And in his shoes, the 2 pair on the river there is a pretty easy call.
Yeah, snap call.
Snap call.
It's as I said before, like king queen, I'm happily shoving on the river.
Right.
So 8-4 is just absolute nuts here.
Yeah. So big double up for Bonomo. Now, for the first time since the start of this final table, you are no longer the chip leader. Not an easy spot here. Only 17 bigs. We're going to see plenty of all-ins. Probably, given your stack size. For the people who are just tuning in, please know that on this show, we break down the entire final table of the $1 million Big One for one drop and taking your questions from the chat. So if you missed any of the action, please skip back in time to watch the start of the show, in which we went through the most iconic hand that Fedor probably has ever played on TV, which was against Rick Salomon and Byron Kaverman, ace-5, ace-king, and pocket tens. Nice little 10 ball on the river. Spoiler alert, but that hand is just something that you love to see. Fedor, all 7 seasons of High Stakes Poker are available on PokerGO. We brought it all there because we are creating the new season 8 of High Stakes Poker. You are not known, at least not in my world, as a cash game player, but would something like High Stakes Poker interest you? Are you someone who would love to play in more high stakes cash games?
Yeah, I actually did play some 1K, 2K the other day. So I played some 1K, 2K on GG, and it's definitely something I can see myself doing more. Let's say it like this. It's not the stuff I worked on the most, for sure. And by working, I mean also just thinking, I've played less than probably, I did play some Zoom 500 in 2014 in Canada on Cherry Island. So I played a couple 10,000 hands there. But in terms of high stakes cash, I never really played much. So I did play some really big games though, and I feel pretty confident if I work more on it. I feel really confident that this is something I can get very good at. So yeah, I don't think I'm crushing the stakes by any means right now, but I can see myself dabbling a little bit in some games there.
About High Stakes Poker, were you a fan of the show back in the day? Were you,
oh yeah,
a poker fan in that sense?
Oh yeah, I was watching all episodes.
So were you, everyone who comes on the show tells me the same thing, and I think it goes to show how much of an icon this guy has become. But were you straight up a Tom Dwan fan, or did you have other favorites in the show?
I did like, it's basically more the hands he played,
right.
And some of the things, it was kind of weird. With his eye thing and like I don't know, he's just an interesting character, but it's so crazy how different. I don't even think I can remember how I perceived him because I already played against him afterwards. So now I have the new, this new image in my head.
Right. So would you say Tom Dwan is like a talented player? Is he tricky? Is he creative? Like, how would you describe his style from having played against him?
He didn't play very well.
Oh, interesting.
But it's more like, I think, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but it's more, I remember playing in Manila against him, and I think it's a mix of a lot of different things. When he played cash game the night before, he didn't really sleep. He didn't seem like he slept much. I don't think he really plays tournaments, so that's also a thing. And it's, this mix of a lot of things where he couldn't really, it was very unlikely that he turns up and is just like this absolute incredible player in this format against, the best players in the world at this point. But it was specifically visible how I think he has been playing a lot of poker the nights before. So.
It's a very different lifestyle when you're in the Manila games, and all those guys want to play against you all the time. It's definitely very different. All right, we got the Queen 10 all in here against King 5. Not much analysis going on as far as being all in for what, 10 bigs at this point. So we'll just let this.
There's Reiner.
There's Reiner, the guy who was on this show last week, in case anyone missed that show. Reiner actually said something interesting. He said that when you guys played in the Super High Roller Bowl in 2016 that you were like very, very far ahead of all the competition as far as the way you thought about the game and the way you played the game. How would you say that is now, and do you think Reiner was right back in 2016?
I mean, it's so hard to say, right? Like, I think there is probably, you will see that on both ways. You will see players who, who definitely were up there, who just didn't really surface. Like, I always thought, for example, Timothy Adams is like, even back then, I think he's always been an absolutely incredible player, and he never really had crazy results. I mean, at least maybe he did, but not that I remember. It's like, oh, he's winning all this stuff. But I always thought, he's one of the toughest guys to play against. And it's interesting where you have these players where it's just not very visible. It's not very, hey, oh, this guy, he's winning everything. He's the best. And I had kind of my own list of players where I thought, oh, wow, like they're really good, or this guy played very well. And then there's players who have really great results where I didn't have the same feeling about. And it's also oftentimes, I think it's a style matchup. Some players do things well against the field, but against each other, it's really good for one player and really bad for the other player. I personally think that in 2014, I believe that I was one of the absolute best online, just because of the preparation I put into. Also, like I took so many notes on players, and I would literally, I think if I looked in the lobby, I had maybe 90 to 95% of the people marked, and really took in-depth notes, like even more, like I had a lot more info on players than I do now. So I took a step back there basically by how much I prepare for it. And back then, almost nobody did that. So my edge was even bigger. The HUD I had was so specific, and there were so many exploits I did against very specific opponents. So that felt like just cruising. Like I'm certain that I had over 50% ROI back then, in over the schedule I played, and maybe even higher than that. So that was very clearly, like I could feel that also, that this is just printing. Now it's different. Like now online, it's a lot tougher, like a lot more. I would say back then, when there were 5 players where I was like, okay, wow, like these are absolute top players. Now it's maybe 5 where I think they're definitely better than me, and then another 30 where I'm like, wow, these guys are really good. So it's a lot broader, strong rec player pool, or they got better, is like relatively how you want to see it. And in terms of live, I really think that my peak was around the 215, 216 time. Maybe even 215, whereas that was a time when I didn't really have the results to back it up. And then 216, I did, but I think I played very, very well at that time. And once I became comfortable playing against everyone, and I felt like, with each player, I felt like, hey, I know the direction of how this guy plays, and I think I have exploits how to win. Like, that was great.
Right. Jack 4 all in here for 6, or actually let's 13 big blinds all in with Jack 4 suited against Bonomo's pocket 10s. So another big all-in showdown. A who's who of poker on the rail of Bonomo there with the Greenwoods and a whole bunch of other players. And you got some characters there on your rail as well. Some people who were predominantly excited to carry you out of this building with the bracelet straight to bottle service. Fedor, what's partying and celebrating a big win like for you? Give me your favorite post-win party story.
I'm not sure which tournament that was, to be honest. Might have been a 25K or 50K in Vegas. I think after the 100K, I'm not even sure how I celebrate. So it's kind of it's this big, fuzzy, blurry thing where I couldn't tell, oh, like after this tournament, we went there and we did that. I just remember that I went out a couple times and we had a lot of fun, but it's not, it changed a lot. In the beginning, I was really partying maybe 3, 4, 5 times. And then it was more having a good time with friends. Oftentimes I just drank water and wasn't even really drinking much. And we just, it was more a go to a place with good music and a fun ambient environment and spend time with friends kind of thing.
Right.
So yeah, these have been actually my most memorable moments, to have good dinner. And then like a good friend of us DJs at the club, and then we go to him and hang out with him and have a good time there with friends. So that's always been fun.
Right. You make it sound so casual. There's no story of you waking up on the side of the road with your shirt ripped and stuff like that?
I mean, I'm not sure that happened, but maybe I don't remember. So yeah, there's been some crazy partying, but nothing crazy excessive. Just a casual,
Shout out to Jordan Westmoreland, Macau 2012. This guy shows up, 2 hours late for day 3 of a big 10K, covered in mud and dirt. And he had gone partying in Macau all night, fell asleep on the side of the road, and walked straight back into the tournament area when he realized he was late for day 3. I'll never forget that moment. And it was even better because you could just see in his face that he was like just in complete shock and disbelief of what had happened over the previous night. But yeah, the Aussies, man. The Aussies know how to party.
They do.
As we continue to watch this heads-up battle between you and Justin Bonomo, how do you look at where you're currently at? Like, how do you balance your life between, the entrepreneurship that you've mentioned before, as well as your poker playing, and do you, tend to look ahead at, what you want to do next?
Right now, a lot of what I've been doing, I rather tune down. So I'm actually I don't have a very busy schedule right now. So I really wanted to open a space here in Vienna. But due to Corona, we didn't do the space I wanted to do. And then now it's kind of in a holding position because I believe that the situation here will also change regarding real estate, and we're kind of postponing that. So that's I think it's good for me to take a step back and I really want to do that, and it's nice to see that. It's like, hey, when you take a step back from a project and realize, hey, wow, I actually really care for that and really want to continue doing that. But on the other hand, it's also a weird feeling immediately. Questions pop up around productivity and how am I useful right now and what am I doing? And it's crazy how much this is present for me when I have a couple of days a week when I'm just no time to wake up, no meetings, and just that's it. It's weird how much that plays a role.
Right. So are you actually, maybe because of this strange year that we are in, appreciating again what it's like to not be so crazy busy all the time? Like, are you maybe?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool for someone in your shoes who's always been all over the world and all over the place as well, with all your projects, to have, perhaps a forced moment where you sort of have to step back.
I actually, it's interesting because I've been saying that for a couple of months now, where there was one very distinct moment where I had a bet around not drinking alcohol for a couple of months. And it really showed me the power again of not doing something in an extreme way, or let's say doing it the extreme way. And it wasn't extreme in an absolute sense, but more in the sense of, hey, I'm drinking, let's say 2 times a week right now, and I have, a couple of glasses on average a week. But I always felt like half of the time I just felt like, why am I having this drink right now? Why am I having the third drink? And then I wake up the next day and I don't sleep well, and I just feel like, hey, I don't know, I didn't need this. And I can feel a big difference in my sleep quality after one glass. So just something where I'm like, hey, I don't know, why am I doing this? And then instead of saying like, hey, I don't drink there, or I don't drink a glass there, it was just like, hey, let me not drink for a couple months. And then I did that. And then I realized, wow, actually, now I can very clearly say, is like, first of all, I like not drinking more than what I did before, but also it felt a lot easier to say I don't drink. And now, like, at this occasion, it's fine. But then I like there I drank once, and then it's like, okay, now I drink, rarely, but I can choose also to really easily go back to not drinking. And that's regarding the extreme, is it was really nice to go to the extreme of not doing anything. Because before I already was on a path of doing less. I was reducing things. I was trying to get out of stuff and reducing my responsibility as well. And then now it was just like, boom, everything gone at one. And I was like, wow, okay, now I want to do this again and this again. But the other 8 things, like, I'm not going to do again. And that was very helpful, rather than, each 3 months getting rid of one thing. Now it was just like, boom, okay, clean slate, let's start from scratch.
Right. I can totally identify with that, especially being in a weight loss prop bet myself right now. It is one of those reminders of like, do I really need this bag of chips, or do I really want $1,000 more than what I can win? Shout out to everyone in that weight loss bet. It's $500 per pound that you miss your goal by, so it's a really good incentive to put down the fork in some kind of way. We're getting lots of shout outs from people in the chat. Please do let us know where you're watching from. I appreciate it. We have, we're heads up. We have a few hands left. We're getting towards the end of the show. So get your question for Fedor in right now. We'll do some quick hitters here at the end, as well as the secret on how to be lucky. Obviously, we can't forget about that. Yeah, let us know where you're watching from on Facebook or YouTube. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Do all that good stuff, and don't miss round 2 of High Stakes Duel, which is tomorrow night at 9 p.m. on the East Coast. So, go figure out wherever that is in your time zone. I know we have people from all over the world. Zachary is saying, I'm a lifelong Prime Mind member. I appreciate what the app has done for me. Does Fedor have any big plans for Primed in the future?
No big plans right now, to answer that one more short. But yeah, I mean, Elliot, who I founded the company with, he's basically, I mean, it's his product. It's like, I just looked at the first thing when we were thinking about founding companies, was like, okay, what's the most valuable thing we know, and how can we make it accessible for more people? And for me, the most valuable thing I knew at that time were the tapes he made for me and others before playing. And that's how we created the app. And so, yeah, that was basically that. So in terms of for Prime Mind, I mean, we're growing that. He's uploading regularly, creating more content, and hopefully, can help more people. Or, if you don't like it, great. If you like it, even better. But for me, it's really been a game changer, and maybe it can be for some others too. And besides that, right now, for me, it's just really about taking a step back and not actually, like, the only thing I know for now is not getting into something right away, but just taking some time.
Exactly. We have Luxembourg, Frankfurt, Germany, Serbia, Calgary, Austria, Copenhagen. We have Philippines in the house. We have Hawaii. I love that. California, Dublin, Canada. We have Texas in the house. I always love hearing where everyone's watching from. Richard is saying, I'm watching from Afghanistan. Richard, I call your bluff. I don't believe it, but if you can send over some proof, I would appreciate it. Marion is asking on Facebook, what's your daily routine like now? Do you have a set routine? Is there like meditation, workout, vegan breakfast? Like, is there a routine, or are you, as you said before, sort of taking it easy, sleeping in a little bit? Perhaps, just not worrying about the routine as much.
Almost no routine right now. It's just, we get regular breakfast with friends here. That's actually quite cool to have, 1 or 2 spots that we basically can go there at 12 and there's always someone sitting and having breakfast. That's really, I like that somehow. Besides that, not really actually. Probably also last couple of years, least routine-ish. And I think it goes hand in hand. I'm not saying that's, I actually like a lot of the things I've been doing more regularly, like sitting down and meditating or cold showers. And but I think it comes hand in hand when a lot of stuff gets thrown out of the window. Sometimes routines get, thrown out with it. So I think I'll step by step start doing the things that feel good again.
Right.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Philippines. We got Côte d'Ivoire in the house. I love that we are in Africa as well. that is incredible. I love you guys all for being with us here on the stream today. Bulgaria, India, New York City, Norway. Man, too many almost to mention. Neb is saying, Fedor, has he been on a heater lately the last 30 days? Fedor, can you summarize, your online poker success in the last few weeks? Because clearly, you have been on quite the heater with some nice results there. And, the fans, as I can tell on the chat, have been sweating the action. So it's been pretty cool.
I'm glad you asked. No, I mean, yeah, absolute crazy. I won a bracelet in the 25K heads up. And I think I'm up like $2 million online. So, yeah, I'm back.
That pays the bills for a while. That's always good to do in the middle of the year. We got 9-4 against 9-4. I love it when the same hand goes up against each other because it makes for such a fun dynamic to look at.
Yeah, is everyone thinking so hard of how do
I win this hand? Just don't fold. Just don't fold. You'll be fine. Let's see if his hand goes anywhere. Bonomo makes it 2.4. You make the call. You guys both look so intense. You guys both have the same hand. It's so funny to see this.
So intense.
This interesting question. I wonder about this one. And I'll take my own little rephrasement of this one. Michael is asking, do you think you are a better online player now? So how I'm going to ask this question is, how would online Fedor 2020 do against online Fedor from 2014, 2015? Yeah,
demolish, most likely.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's normal. It's 6 years. It's I mean, even 216 against 214, it's just how it is. Like, if I look at my stats, even, it's always relative, almost not really absolutely. Maybe there's a chance in a 6 months time window or in a 9 months time window that I was better 6 months before, but over 2 years, I would have made a lot of mistakes to be worse afterwards. So like 2020 against 214 is not even close.
Right. That's kind of cool though, because that goes to show the evolution of someone as a poker player. So if you're watching this at home, even if you play low stakes, you got to keep improving. Even though
for sure,
even though you might not be a pro, if you're not getting better, everyone around you is. So keep that in mind. Always try to get better, no matter what it is that you do. Getting some love for Poker Code in the chat as well. You, of course, have worked really hard on creating a training platform and a place for people to really study their game. What has that journey been like?
That's also a big reason of why I enjoyed to spend time there. It's just really fun for me to see people grow. Like, doesn't really matter actually so much what it is. It's more actually the impact of the growth. So it's just super awesome to see someone, if someone goes from $10 playing as an amateur and now he's beating, $50 tournaments, and like, it's just something cool to see. It's like, wow, I helped with that. I could give him input, and I just did a stats review with the team yesterday. I was just like, hey guys, let's jump on a call. And then there were like 50 people spontaneously joining a call. And it's just so cool to see how with little things you can, for them, this is, they don't see it, it's because for me, I've spent so much time with it that I can filter that in this, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. And I can just like, hey, look at that, look at that, look at that. But when he looks at it, he doesn't see how he can improve or how he can then move up to the next level. So I really think that there's so much value in that type of exchange, where for me, it's just an hour I invest. And for them, it's really, maybe sometimes tens of hours or hundreds of hours saved that they can then improve with. So that's the part I like the most about Poker Code, is just this this level of improvement. That's a lot of fun. And then you have this tight-knit group of people, you start to get to know them and like their personal life and why they play poker. And it's more about actually a lot of them aren't professionals. Like, that's the interesting part, is there are some, like we do have mid-stake, we have high-stakes players and so on, but a lot of the people are, they play maybe $30, $50 tournaments, and they really want to improve, but they're not playing full-time. They have a job, or they play maybe 20 hours a week. So it's cool to see that there's a lot of players passionate who just play for fun and still want to challenge them.
Absolutely. So yeah, if you guys want to learn more from Fedor, Poker Code is the place where he's giving out all that advice. Morty is saying, love the show. I'm watching from El Paso, Texas. Thanks, Morty, for tuning in. Brian as well joining us from Colorado. We got Czech Republic in the house. So many places, so many people. And Max is asking on YouTube, what is there left for you to do in poker? I mean, I don't really think that needs an answer because, you don't really have to, aspire to anything in particular. But I guess my question would be, how much do you still love the game? Because that clearly is the most important thing, right?
I mean, right now I'm having a ton of fun. And I think it's a mix of the games that run, the players that play, and the amount I play. So I could tell when I was playing, 25, 30 hours a week in May, I didn't really like it so much. It was more of a grind and just not the thing I really wanted to get back into. So it's nice where it is right now. And nevertheless, I think I'm showing that you can play, 15 hours a week and still compete with the best. So that's I'm really proud of that, actually. It's really, I'm very happy about that. Very nice feeling.
Absolutely. I love it. All right, here we got Bonomo with top pair leading on the river into your queen high. Interesting move there. Obviously, queen high can't really go into too many directions with that hand. Is there a point in heads-up play where you get frustrated, or is it easy to stay focused on your game plan?
Oh, heads-up can be so frustrating.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
It's especially when you're 50 bigs deep or whatever. Like now it's 30 bigs. Sometimes you think he's absolutely crushing you, and then it feels like the easiest heads up ever. Like I have these things so often when you just think you play very well and you think you do, and then next 100 hands, it's just lots of setups or whatever, and then you think you're the worst. It's a really weird dynamic of it's difficult. It's really difficult to stay super calm and relaxed when things aren't going your way at all. So that's how it is. It's part of it as well.
Intense stare down here from Justin Bonomo, limping on the button there with ace jack.
I should shove this hand, I think.
All in and a call. Let's listen in.
With the best hand and Fedor on the hook. Can Bonomo hang on this time?
Pretty standard hand, right?
Yeah, nothing to do, unfortunately.
Yeah. The 4 again would have helped you.
Would have been nice.
Wow.
Sorry for the spoiler.
You gotta love him.
A big moment, obviously, for Justin Bonomo. The year of Bonomo, 2018, on an absolute tear, jumping into #1 on the all-time money list as well because of this win, because of winning Super High Roller Bowl and many other events. And then, of course, there was Bryn Kenny with the Triton Million, who took back over that first place. Fedor, you're within striking distance, though. If you win one stupid big live tournament, you can still get #1.
Yeah, I mean, that one would have almost made it.
Almost. Right. It would have been very, very close.
Fedor, there is a deuce.
Us professional poker players would say a deuce is fine. It just makes it a little more interesting. 3 4s.
See the outs for Fedor now. 5
Yeah.
or 4.
Yep.
Doubled those outs.
7 outs with 1 to come.
Bottom of 1 card. From another bracelet, the river card is
Wow.
Queen. And in this battle royal of poker heavyweights, Justin Bonomo is king.
Bonomo does it. He wins the big one for 1 drop. And, just amazing, Fedor. Thank you for joining me watching a final table that you didn't win because you won so many. And now we end up watching one where we see someone else raising their hand. So that in and of itself is worth something. I guess it would have been too easy to break down one of your victories.
You're welcome.
All right, for the people who are watching, thank you so much once again for joining me and being part of this show. I really, really appreciate it. I'll be back on Thursday night watching Season 5 of High Stakes Poker, as I'll be joined by Danielle Anderson, the Moon Girl, to have some fun, perhaps a beverage or two, and just enjoy some High Stakes Poker action. Next week on the show, Dan Smith and Ali Imsirovic watching Poker Masters. So lots of tournament play to be broken down. For myself, his name is Fedor Holz. You guys don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, do all that good stuff. Watch High Stakes Duel Round 2 on PokerGo, Facebook, and YouTube tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And Fedor, I will probably be pretty certain that we'll get you on High Stakes Duel if that match reaches 7 figures, right?
I'm also in before that, but yes.
Okay, I appreciate it. You guys all, thank you so much for watching. This was Run It Back.